This could be the studio of any two critics, but it just happens to belong to a critic named Tapji and a critic named Surferclock. Like most critics, Tapji and Surferclock have theme parks to play in, and they both live together in the wonderful world of make-believe. Well, Tapji, most likely anyway. We don't have a clue what's going on with him. Even just some shrink downtown was just totally lost. But the best ride stars a bear called Winnie the Pooh, or Pooh for short. Now Pooh has some very unusual adventures, and they all happened right here on What's the Attraction?
Hi again everyone, and welcome to the 100-Acre Wood, the setting for today's attraction. This pastoral setting of bucolic nostalgia is deep in one of England's deciduous forests, and is home to several of our very best friends. Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, Piglet, Eeyore, Rabbit, Owl, Kanga, Roo, Gopher, Christopher Robin, and all those wacky heffalumps and woozles are here to escort you into the land of milk and, well, honey. So let's open up that storybook and read up on our favorite tubby little cubby all stuffed with fluff.
In 1926, British author A.A. Allen Alexander Milne published his first children's book, Winnie the Pooh, to immense acclaim in Europe. It was the first of 4 books he wrote and friend E.H. Shepard illustrated about Milne's son, Christopher Robin, and the adventures in the nearby forest with his stuffed toys and some of the local animals. And by the way, where did the bear get his name? Well, a bear at the London Zoo was named Winnie, and a swan at the local park was christened Pooh by the Milnes. The was in the middle was meant to infer that Pooh was a boy.
In the 1960s, Walt Disney read the Pooh stories to his daughters as bedtime stories and decided they would make good fodder for a Disney feature. To maximize Pooh's popularity in the States, where he was still a relative unknown, Walt released 3 short subjects starring Winnie the Pooh and friends. The first was Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree in 1966. The Oscar-winning Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day premiered 2 years later, then Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2. Finally, the 3 came together in 1977's The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. The bear's success has since skyrocketed.
Pooh has had 4 theatrical releases and 4 television series. Because of his enduring popularity, a ride was plainly necessary, at least as far back as the 80s. But where? Well, in the late 90s, with popularity dwindling at the classic Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in Fantasyland, Disney executives decided to raise the Hellbound attraction in 1998. But the moment longtime fans caught wind that Mr. Toad was going merrily on his way to nowhere in particular for his last time, guest response erupted into outrage. Despite in-park protests and online petitions, Mr. Toad couldn't be saved, and in June of 1999, Winnie the Pooh opened with begrudging acceptance.
In 2011, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh underwent a massive refurbishment, redecorating the exterior. Instead of traditional chains and switchbacks in the queue, guests can now walk through Pooh's house, Eeyore's hut, Rabbit's garden, and 12-foot-tall storybook pages with dripping honey kids can play around with. And no, it's not real honey. It's digital touchscreens.
Here are a few inside tidbits to keep your eyes peeled for. First, from 2005 until 2010, there used to be a Pooh-themed playground directly across from the attraction called Pooh's Playful Spot. Its centerpiece was Pooh Bear's house, the grand tree that now stands at the entrance of the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh today. Since its initial spot used to be where 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea submarine voyage used to be, there is an engraving of one of the Captain Nemo's Nautilus submarines inside Pooh's doorframe.
Also, as you ride the attraction, keep your eyes peeled when your vehicle enters Owl's house. The second you enter, look to the wall on your left. You might see a portrait of Owl being handed the deed to Toad Hall by none other than the reckless amphibian himself, Mr. Toad. Also in Owl's house is a picture on the floor to your right. If you're lucky, you'll see a rather crude painting of Winnie the Pooh hanging out with fellow Toad alumni, Molly.
Now, if you've seen the short film Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day, you already have a good idea as to what the attraction's plot has to offer. Pooh and his friends struggle through the windy day in the 100-Acre Wood. Then Tigger invites you to bounce along with him. Now, your vehicle, a honey pot by the way, accepts Tigger's invite and begins bouncing with him. Tigger then warns Pooh Bear of the honey-thieving heffalumps and woozles. Pooh falls asleep and you enter his nightmare about the sweet-toothed creatures. But soon the rains come, and the 100-Acre Woods become submerged, and your honey pot begins to bob and wobble like a buoy. Do our friends keep their heads above water, or does the flood claim our beloved forest?
To further authenticate the attraction, the ride also features the renowned Sherman Brothers songs from the original Pooh shorts. So all that said, was Mr. Toad unjustly ousted, at least prematurely, or are Pooh and friends rightly suited in their current home?
Where do we begin?
Well, the short answer is no.
We actually met up with Reese, and we asked him to take another ride on Mr. Toad to see was it worth it. Didn't we, Reese?
It was a ride that featured vehicular manslaughter and a trip to hell. I had high hopes.
How uncomfortably awkward.
Very much so.
Anyway, when we rode the ride, it was just cardboard cutouts, there was a lot of noise, and of course, that lovely scene of getting hit by a train and winding up in hell.
We actually got stuck there for like 3 minutes.
I think the cars got backed up. Then that devil popped up. That was Jeffrey Katzenberg's face on that devil, wasn't it?
Every time I look upon that face, I hear the Duloc song.
Oh, don't even get me started. Don't get me started.
So, focusing back towards Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, I think it is it's a fairly worthy replacement.
Yes. First of all, let me talk about the entryway for the ride itself. It's set up like a big bookshelf with pages flying all over the place. I like how that's a continuing theme for just about every time we see Winnie the Pooh. That it's always told with a storybook. Heck, they even used it in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, as Sora and friends enter the actually, I believe it's just Sora in those worlds. He always enters through the storybook of Winnie the Pooh, whether it was in, I believe it was in both Kingdom Hearts and Kingdom Hearts 2.
It was.
They always enter through a storybook.
The best part of the ride is when you turn the corner from Owl's house and now you're bouncing with Tigger. The vehicle doesn't really bounce so much as kind of rock back and forth, but you get to see Tigger and you hear the song. The wonderful thing about Tigger is, and it's fun. I remember hearing that kids overwhelmingly wanted to bounce with Tigger when asked what they wanted to do in the 100-Acre Wood, and we get that.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it's there's definitely like those tactile effects like that, and the floating in the rain scene. Mm-hmm. That was pretty good.
Oh, and the Pepper's Ghost, where you see Pooh falling asleep and dreaming. That's pretty well done.
An awesome visual effect, for sure.
But there are some flaws. Like, when you transition into the floating, there's a lot of clacking and clanging. I've written it like 3 or 4 times, and every time, when you transition from Heffalumps Woozles to the flooding, it does that.
I only ever noticed that the last time we rode.
Really?
You said that to me, and, like, because I think we went on it twice the last time we went. Mm-hmm. Which they're looking at us like we're crazy, but in any case, we're theme park critics. So yeah. I wanted to ride again to see if I could notice that. And the second time, and sure enough, I noticed that. It's a little flawed, but I think most kids won't notice that.
But that's not the ride's only flaw. First of all, most everything in the ride is just wooden cutouts. Now, you could make the argument that, yes, it's a page, in a storybook, it's a 2D world. But honestly, I think that's a really weak argument. It feels fake. I mean, there's cardboard cutouts of bushes. Why can't they use artificial plants?
That's true. And I think even when they do transition some of the stuff into 3D, mm-hmm. that, along with the cutouts, it just feels kind of dated.
Yeah.
I know it came up in 1999, but hasn't the ride had a couple referishments since then?
At least
the ride
3
itself
or 4,
at
yeah.
all? Or
at least 3 or 4 or so since then, I would think.
Maybe.
But ultimately, the ride does have a very simple setup. It has a simple story, very simple execution. How'd you describe the story?
It's very cute.
What was that? Rudimentary?
Rudimentary, yes.
Rudimentary, yeah.
It's a rudimentary story, but I think for the age group that's supposed to be enjoying it, I think it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very familiar to the adults who grew up with the stories.
But more than anything, it just feels straight out of the Eisner era.
Yeah, the Eisnerian era was definitely a very interesting one in Disney history. Something we'll definitely gloss over
sometime in the future on a future podcast. Ultimately, I love Winnie the Pooh, so this ride's always a treat for me, but I wish there could have been a little more effort put into it. I'm giving it a 3 out of 5.
I think I'm going to take a step down. I'm going to say it's an okay attraction, but it's not really a good attraction. I'm going to go ahead and give it a 2.5 out of 5. So that's a 2.5 out of 5 from Surfer Clock and a 3 out of 5 from Tab G.
Okay, so what does this ride require of you in terms of disability accommodations? Well, first, wheelchairs are welcome, although those in scooters will need to transfer into a wheelchair. For those who can't transfer into the ride seat, a specially designed honeypot, it can accommodate wheelchairs. Handheld captioning and audio description are available as well.
And, as always, children must be at least 7 years old to go alone, and if not, they need to ride with someone at least 14 years old.
And please, no snacks on the ride.
Pooh? Ladies and gentlemen, it seems as though our friend Winnie the Pooh is here with us, in the studio.
And he's raising a good point. Please finish all food and drink before riding.
Unless you have honey, of course. Especially if you have the kind of honey that's meant for sharing. That is the very best sort of honey.
Does Disney even sell honey at the parks?
How did you even get in here, Pooh?
Tigger bounced me in through the window.
Okay. So where's Tigger now?
Hello! Name's Tigger! T-I-double-G-R. Just spells Tigger.
Reese, did you get that?
Dude, it's my new profile pic on Facebook. I got like 12 retweets already. So, what you two blokes talking about?
We were gonna discuss recommendations. As in, who would like the mini adventures of Winnie the Pooh?
I like it. I like it a rather lot.
And two for me also.
Kids will enjoy it. Its 3-minute runtime will hold their attention and probably get the biggest kick bouncing with Tigger. Adults will like it if they grew up with the Winnie the Pooh stories. There's no thrills or major special effects. It's a kid's ride with a big cute factor. It's still worth at least one ride.
Thank you very much. New friends are always welcome here.
Especially ones you can bounce with.
Not on my back, Tigger, please. Ow.
Well, thanks again, everyone. Until next time, I'm Surfer Clock.
And I'll bounce back eventually.
And thanks for listening to What's the Attraction, where our work is your vacation.
TTFN. Ta-ta for now.